All right, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're exploring one of the most fascinating, high-stakes stories of elemental survival in the natural world. Welcome. We are going to look at a totally invisible drama that is playing out literally right beneath our feet, in the air we're breathing right now, and deeply embedded inside the DNA of every single living cell on Earth, including yours. We are, of course, talking about the nitrogen cycle. But you know, to truly understand why this cycle is the absolute engine of life, we first have to understand the massive, global problem that it's actually trying to solve.
So here is the core paradox. Every single living organism on this planet, plants, animals, you, me, we all need nitrogen as an essential building block to make proteins. And frankly, without proteins, there's absolutely no life. Yet, if you just look up at the atmosphere, we're practically swimming in an ocean of nitrogen gas. I mean, a full 78% of the air around us is just nitrogen. So if we're completely surrounded by it, why on earth do organisms constantly struggle to get enough? Why are farmers spending millions of dollars on fertilizers every year? The answer to that question is exactly what drives the incredibly intricate, microscopic machinery of our entire planet.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the great nitrogen paradox, then move into fixing the unusable gas, moving up the food web, and meeting the essential recyclers. After that, we'll expose the denitrifying villains, before wrapping up with mastering the cycle. Let's get right to it. Part 1. The Great Nitrogen Paradox.
Think of our setting here as the ecosystem. An ecosystem is simply an interacting unit that contains a community of organisms and their physical environment. And what's cool is this is a wonderfully scalable concept. Your setting could be as incredibly massive as an entire freshwater lake that's just teeming with millions of life forms, or it could be as small and contained as a single decaying log resting on a forest floor. But wherever you look, large or small, these complex, high-stakes survival dynamics are constantly playing out.
Now, within our ecosystem setting, we have distinct populations. By definition, a population is just a group of organisms of one specific species living in the exact same area at the exact same time. Think of a population of earthworms wiggling through the soil, or a population of frogs hanging out by the water. All of these distinct populations are desperately trying to grow, to survive, and most importantly, to secure enough nutrients, especially nitrogen, to keep their numbers stable against some pretty tremendous odds.
But here is where the stakes get really high. None of these populations exist in isolation. Not a single one. They're all linked by food webs, which basically show the transfer of energy and the deep, deep interdependence of organisms. If you change just one population, the shockwaves are felt everywhere. For example, if a population of earthworms suddenly decreases, well, the grass plants might actually flourish for a bit because fewer things are eating them. But the populations of frogs and mice, which desperately rely on those earthworms for energy and vital proteins, they're going to crash. They are all intimately tethered together by this invisible thread.
And all of this brings us to what is essentially the master blueprint. It's the ultimate safety net for these fragile food webs, the complete nitrogen cycle. This is the cycle through which nitrogen continuously moves between living organisms and the environment, and it relies almost entirely on 4 very distinct types of bacteria. We are going to break this down step by step so you can really see exactly how the gears turn here.
Section 2. Fixing the unusable gas. Let's get to the root of that paradox we talked about earlier. The nitrogen gas, or N2, floating around in the atmosphere, is incredibly stubbornly stable. It is locked tight by a massive triple covalent bond right between the 2 nitrogen atoms. You can really think of it like a biological bank vault that just refuses to open. Because of this ridiculously strong bond, neither plants nor animals can simply absorb it from the air. It takes a massive, almost violent amount of energy to break those 2 atoms apart. So the Earth needs a highly specialized way to force this bond open so the nitrogen can actually be used by life.
The first part of this solution is called nitrogen fixation. It's literally the act of grabbing that unusable gas and fixing it into a usable compound. And the Earth actually pulls this off in 2 remarkably different ways. First up, through raw elemental power, lightning strikes. The sheer electrical energy of a lightning bolt is one of the very few things strong enough to literally rip the bond between N2 atoms apart, instantly turning them into nitrous oxides that dissolve in rainwater and plummet straight down into the soil. Crazy, right? Second, we have our microscopic biological heroes, nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Some of these guys drift freely in the dirt, while others, like rhizobium, negotiate this amazing mutualistic real estate deal. They live right inside the root nodules of leguminous plants like peas and beans. Working tirelessly in the dark down there, they convert N2 gas straight into ammonia and ammonium compounds.
But wait, there's a slight catch. While our fixers are great at producing ammonia and ammonium, plants can't easily drink up those specific compounds. We need our next set of microscopic heroes to upgrade it. This process is called nitrification, and it happens entirely underground. Nitrifying bacteria execute this brilliant two-stage chemical refinement. First, they oxidize the ammonium ions into nitrite ions. Then, a completely different squad of nitrifying bacteria steps in to oxidize those nitrites into nitrate ions. And nitrates? Nitrates are the absolute favorite, premium, VIP source of nitrogen for plants. Now the vault is finally open.
Section 3. Moving up the food web. So plants eagerly drink up those highly usable soil nitrates through their roots. They often even expend their own energy using active transport just to get it inside. Once it's in there, the plant uses this nitrogen to synthesize essential amino acids and, ultimately, plant proteins. Now the nitrogen is officially in the biological game. When herbivores, our primary consumers, eat those plants, they digest the plant proteins and reassemble that exact same nitrogen into animal proteins. They're building muscle, fur, bone. Then predators eat the herbivores. And just like that, the precious nitrogen successfully cascades up the entire animal kingdom, building bigger and far more complex life.
The crucial takeaway here is this. When you look at a majestic apex predator at the very top of the food chain, say a soaring hawk or a lion out on the savannah, their very existence, the actual proteins making up their muscles and the DNA inside their cells, relies entirely on those tiny, invisible nitrogen-fixing and nitrifying bacteria working away in the dirt. It's a profound, almost unbelievable level of interdependence.
Section 4. The essential recyclers.
Now, if nitrogen just stayed locked inside bodies forever, the world would rapidly run out of soil nutrients, and life would simply grind to a halt. To prevent a catastrophic nutrient bottleneck like that, we absolutely need the third major process in our cycle, decomposition. By definition, this is the breakdown of dead materials into simpler organic matter. It is nature's ultimate non-stop recycling program. Whenever an organism dies, or honestly even when it just produces waste, our next group of vital microorganisms steps up. Decomposers, which are primarily bacteria and fungi, feast on the remains. But they also process animal waste. In fact, right now, inside an animal's liver, there's a process called deamination that's removing the nitrogen-heavy amino group from excess amino acids. This produces urea, which gets excreted as urine. So the decomposers break down the proteins from the dead bodies and the urea from the waste, and they convert them back into raw ammonium. They release this straight back into the dirt, handing it directly over to the nitrifying bacteria to start the whole upgrade process all over again. The loop is officially closed.
Section 5. The Denitrifying Villains.
Now I have to introduce you to the true antagonists of our story, denitrifying bacteria. These microorganisms lurk in poorly aerated environments, like highly waterlogged, muddy soil where oxygen is super scarce, because they are strictly anaerobic. Instead of helping the food web, their process, denitrification, literally steals the hard-won premium nitrates right out of the soil. They break them down and vent the nitrogen straight back into the atmosphere as useless N2 gas. They are total saboteurs, just completely undoing all the hard work of the fixing and nitrifying bacteria.
Because this relentless theft severely reduces soil fertility and essentially cripples crop growth, human farmers actually have to actively wage war against these anaerobic villains. And to defeat an anaerobic enemy, your absolute best weapon is oxygen. So farmers will aggressively plow and turn over the soil to aerate it, and they'll carefully manage field drainage to prevent any kind of waterlogging. By keeping the soil absolutely flooded with oxygen, they suppress the denitrifying bacteria and protect their precious nitrates.
Section 6. Mastering the cycle.
Okay, actually, let me pause and emphasize this because it's a huge stumbling block. The absolute most frequent pitfall for anyone trying to understand this, and a classic trap, is confusing these two really similar sounding words, fixation and nitrification. Let's clear it up once and for all. Nitrogen fixation is the act of pulling from the sky. It takes atmospheric N2 and fixes it down into the soil as ammonia. Nitrification, on the other hand, happens entirely underground. It does not touch the sky at all. It simply upgrades the compounds that are already in the dirt, turning ammonium into nitrites and then into those plant-friendly nitrates. So just remember, fixation crosses the sky-soil border, nitrification is an underground upgrade. With all these pieces in place, when you look at a stripped-down basic schematic of this cycle, it shouldn't just look like a confusing jumble of letters and arrows anymore. You can now easily read the story. See an arrow shooting straight from the air down into the soil? That's your nitrogen-fixing bacteria grabbing N2. Arrows moving from ammonium to nitrites? That's our nitrifying bacteria doing their trusty underground upgrade. Arrows coming from organic matter back to ammonium? Decomposers hard at work. And an arrow escaping from the soil back up to the air. That's the villainous denitrifying bacteria sabotaging the soil. We've just traced the totally invisible journey of an element that makes up the bulk of the air we breathe, yet requires a massive, ridiculously complex biological team to actually make it usable for life. It really leaves you wondering about the incredibly fragile interdependence of our ecosystems, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. If just one of those microscopic bacterial cogs stopped turning tomorrow, if the nitrifier simply vanished or the decomposers decided to quit, the entire grand pyramid of animals and plants would simply starve for nitrogen and collapse. It's a really profound reminder that the biggest, most visible life on Earth is entirely at the mercy of the absolute smallest. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the incredible mechanics of the world around you,